Cambyses II, Cyrus's son, became king of kings after his father died. Egypt, the land of pharaohs in ancient times, was his first goal. In his late 20s, Herodotus went there to hear directly from the priests of Memphis, which was the city's spiritual center. The priests told him that the Egyptians used to think they were the oldest people in the world. Pharaoh Psamtik, the first of the 26th dynasty, on the other hand, put this assertion to the test with a strange experiment that would change how they saw history forever. He told a shepherd to raise 2 babies in silence so they couldn't talk. The kids' first word that they said over and over again after 2 years was bekos, which is the Phrygian word for bread. Psamtik came to the conclusion that the Phrygians were older than the Egyptians because of this. Herodotus was amazed by Egyptian conventions, which frequently seemed to be the antithesis of Greek ones. Women worked in the markets, and men worked at home weaving. Men carried things on their heads, and women carried things on their shoulders. Even everyday things went against what Greeks thought. Women in Egypt went to the toilet standing up, while men squatted. They ate in public, but took care of their intimate requirements within, saying that what can't be helped should be hidden, and what is honorable should be seen. The priesthood was also turned around. Women could serve the gods in other places, but in Egypt, only men could be priests. Egyptian priests shaved their heads clean as a show of ritual cleanliness, unlike Greek priests who had long hair. Egyptians grew their hair and beards long when they were in mourning, but people in other countries trimmed theirs. They used their feet to knead dough and clay, and their bare hands to clean up dirt. The Greeks thought their ways were both strange and interesting. Egyptians circumcised their boys, which is another way they were different from the Greeks. The Greeks moved their hands from left to right, whereas the Egyptians moved theirs from right to left. They looked like Greece in every way. Being clean was very important. Every person cleaned their bronze drinking cup every day. The linen cloaks were always clean and never wore soiled. Egyptians cared more about cleanliness than looks, which made them different from their Greek neighbors. Herodotus observed remarkable similarities among deities. Not all Egyptians prayed to the same gods, but Isis and Osiris were worshipped by everyone. He thought of Osiris as Dionysus, since both festivals had the same wild drinking and partying. Priests had to follow tight rules. They shaved their bodies every other day, wore linen robes and sandals made of papyrus, and stayed away from things that were dirty. But they lived well, thanks to the people who brought them steak, geese, and wine every day. The rules about what foods were off limits were just as rigorous. People hated beans and fish. People thought pigs were dirty, and even touching one meant bathing completely clothed in the river. People hated swineherds so much that no one outside of their group would marry their kids. The only time this happened was at Osiris's feast at the full moon. After that, pigs were killed and devoured. Outside that day, the animal was still untouchable, held by taboo. People loved goats and cats, though. Pan, one of Egypt's oldest gods, had the head and legs of a goat. That meant that goats were holy. Herodotus was shocked to see a woman have sex with a goat in public worship. In death, as in life, cats and dogs were honored. When a cat died, The family shaved their eyebrows as a sign of grief. They shaved their whole bodies if a dog died. Cats were mummified and put in tombs, while dogs were buried next to their owners. Mummification was a big deal for the Egyptians. They embalmed not just people, but also mongooses, shrews, hawks, wolves, and even crocodiles. Experts turned this into a job, using approaches that ranged from simple to complex. Herodotus wrote about the most expensive process. A hooked iron was used to pull the brain out via the nostrils. Some of it was taken out, and some of it was turned into liquid. After that, the body was opened up, the organs were taken out, and the cavity was cleaned with palm wine and spices. Before the wound was sewed up, they put plants with perfume inside. The body was put in natron and left to dry for 70 days. Lastly, linen bandages were placed around the body and sealed with resin. The mummy was put in a coffin standing up, ready for eternity.
Move along now, my good friends.
Herodotus looked at the Nile. For Egypt, it was the giver of life, flooding every year to irrigate crops. It was weird to the Greeks because they counted on rain from the sky. The Egyptians chuckled and said, "What if the gods don't give us rain?"
Tell me, venerable priest.
Herodotus agreed, but he also said that Egypt would starve if the Nile stopped flooding. This made him wonder two things. Why did the Nile flood, and where did it start? Questions that even smart people couldn't answer. Greeks thought that the Nile got bigger because the heat melted snow from Ethiopia. Today we know this is partly true, but Herodotus didn't believe it since he thought snow couldn't exist in a scorching Africa. He thought that concept was crazy. He liked a different vision. He thought that the north wind pushed the sun across Egypt in the winter, where its heat sucked water into the sky and lowered the river. These kinds of speculations showed more curiosity than science, but they also showed that his mind was always racing. Herodotus got his information from a temple scribe of Athena, who the Egyptians called Neith. He added that there was a border town called Elephantine south of Egypt, where the Nile's mystery became deeper. Elephantine was an island in the Nile that looked like a big tusk. The water churned around it so quickly that boats couldn't get through. Priests told Herodotus that the river came from a bottomless pit under these spinning lakes. They say that Pharaoh Psamtik once checked the allegation by dropping a rope far into the hole. Even though it went on and on, there was no bottom. The story was false, but Herodotus did say that Elephantine was where the Nile entered Egypt. He thought Egypt was a real gift from the Nile. No crops would thrive, and no towns would rise without its floods. Almost all Egyptians still reside in a narrow band along the river's banks, where they get their water. One of the stories that Herodotus wrote down was about Pharaoh Rampsinitus, who was famous for being very rich. He made a treasure room that looked like it couldn't be broken into, but the builder constructed a secret door that only he knew about. The builder told his sons about the passage on his deathbed and told them to use it. The brothers came in after he died and quietly took away his assets. The king immediately saw that treasures were disappearing without any sign of forced entrance. The thefts kept happening until people started to get suspicious. Rampsinitus told others to install traps in the room. The next time the brothers came, one of them was caught and couldn't get away. They knew they would be found when dawn came. The sibling who was stuck implored his friend to cut off his head. He couldn't be recognized without it. His brother did what he said, even though he was sad. When the dawn came up, guards found only a headless body and were confused by the thieves. The thief's headless body was hung on the city wall by Pharaoh Rhampsinitus. Anyone who was sad would be taken in for questioning. The mother who was sad saw her kid amid the crowd. She told the sibling who was still alive to get the body back, saying she would betray him if he didn't. The thief came up with a strategy. He loaded a donkey with wineskins and walked past the soldiers, spilling the jars on purpose. They drank so much that they fell over and couldn't move. The burglar hacked up his brother's body and took it away without saying a word. The king was angry and made plans again. He told his daughter to go to a brothel and ask every client questions. She would ask the man who admitted to knowing about the robbery, "What is the smartest and most evil thing you have done?" The burglar found out about the trap and got ready. He had a fake arm that he got from an embalmer. He confessed to both acts when asked, chopping off his brother's head and taking the body from the wall. The princess grabbed his hand, but it was only the fake arm. The thief got away again. The king was shocked, not angry, when he heard. He said he would forgive the man if he would only show himself. The thief stepped forward because he believed the king's promise.
Welcome,
Instead of punishing him, Rhampsinitus praised his cleverness. He married his daughter to the robber and said, "We Egyptians are known for our intelligence, but this man is smarter than all of us." So the smart thief became a relative of a monarch. In Memphis, priests told Herodotus that Cheops, whom they called Khufu, came after Rhampsinitus. People hated his rule. He shut down temples, banned sacrifices, and compelled his subjects to work on the biggest structures. Hundreds of thousands were forced to work in shifts, each lasting 3 months. They took huge stones from quarries in the Arabian hills to the Nile, put them on boats, and then pulled them to the plateau. It took 10 years of hard work to build the enormous causeway, which was used to move the blocks. 20 more years went into building the pyramid itself, which was a square with 800 feet on each side. It was as tall as it was wide, and every brick was polished and perfectly positioned. The pyramid looked like stairs. The stones were raised level by wooden levers. They started with the topmost levels and worked their way down to the base, a work of incredible skill and hard work. The laborers ate radishes, onions, and garlic. Herodotus read a sign that said that bread alone cost 1,600 talents of silver. But the statue that stayed up didn't make them hate their king any less. Egyptians reviled his memory and refused to say his name even hundreds of years later. For them, Khufu's pyramid was both a wonder and a scar, a reminder of a dictator who abused his people for stone. Herodotus himself was amazed by what he saw. He said that even if all the Greek temples and monuments were put together, they would still be less impressive than the pyramid. He had seen the beauty of Ephesus and Samos. Herodotus wrote of the Crocodilopolis maze, which had 3,000 rooms, half of which were above ground and half of which were below. He walked through the upper rooms by himself. The corridors and courtyards were so big and complicated that every turn led to a new mystery. He never seen the rooms below earth. Egyptians said no, since they had the tomb of the person who built the labyrinth. He was still amazed by the stone walls with carvings of people, the white courtyards that shone, and the pyramid at the end with huge pictures carved into it. Lake Moeris was even bigger, and it was made by people. It was as long as Egypt's shoreline, with a depth of 90 meters and a width of 400 miles. Pharaohs had transformed it into a huge reservoir that protected their land from drought and hunger. 2 pyramids, each 180 meters tall, grew from its waters, half submerged and half above the surface. On top of them were huge stone sculptures that sat like kings, keeping watch over the lake's quiet waters. But violence came after wonder. Cambyses II, the son of Cyrus, was the king of kings. Amasis, the pharaoh of Egypt, made deadly mistakes. First, he dispatched his eye doctor to Persia. The man was so ashamed that he planned to get back at his own king. Then came the trickery. The doctor told Cambyses to marry Amasis's daughter. Amasis sent another person, the daughter of a past monarch, knowing that he would never agree. When she got to Persia, she told Cambyses about the lies, which made him very angry. There was another treachery. Phanes of Halicarnassus, who used to be Amasis's trusty advisor, switched sides and joined Persia. Cambyses was already gathering his troops, but he didn't know how to get to Egypt. Phanes was the one who showed the way and made the plan. Cambyses marched forward with help and anger driving him. The man who had previously been Egypt's enemy through marriage, deception and betrayal would now be its conqueror. As Herodotus wrote, fate made him wiser. Cambyses ruled over the huge Neo-Babylonian domains, but he wanted to get to Egypt by going through Arabia. The Arabian ruler was happy to help and agreed to the request. He provided help across the desert path from Gaza to Pelusium. Pharaoh Amasis died peacefully before the conflict could start. His son, Psamtik III, took over the kingdom and the war that was about to start. But Egypt was at a big disadvantage without Phanes, the traitor whose advice now led Persia. But Psamtik got his army together. They took Phanes's kids, cut their throats, drained their blood into wine, and drank it on the battlefield in front of the Persian army to get back at him for betraying them. Their defiance was bloody, but their cause was doomed. The fight at Pelusium was quite hard, but the Egyptians ran away in a panic because Persia was too strong. Cambyses sent messengers on a Mytilenean ship to talk about how to get peace. Instead, the Egyptians slaughtered them, cutting up the crew and bringing the pieces to Memphis. Cambyses was so angry that he attacked Memphis. They killed 10 important Egyptians for every Persian killed on the ship. Psamtik's son was killed, but the young pharaoh lived. He subsequently killed himself after losing a failed rebellion. Cambyses' anger was still not gone. Even though Amasis was dead, the hurt from his trickery still hurt. The king of kings had the pharaoh's mummified body brought out, whipped, pierced with spears, and had its hair cut off. Cambyses finally told them to burn the body. Cremation was a sin for Persians, who considered fire as a deity, and for Egyptians, who saw it as a living thing. Cambyses had broken both his own faith and the faith of the people he controlled by doing this. Cambyses looked to Ethiopia after Egypt. He sent spies dressed as messengers with purple fabric, gold, perfumes and wine. The Ethiopian monarch, on the other hand, saw through the trick. He showed them the wonders of his land instead of punishing them. They saw that Ethiopians lived 40 years longer than Persians, had fairer skin, and was stronger than anyone else. A lagoon with violet-scented water where people bathed, and slaves in golden chains that were heavier than the gifts Persia had brought. The king admitted that Persians made better wine. The Ethiopian king finally took down his big bow and handed it as a gift. When the Persians can easily bend this bow, let them come after us. Cambyses should be thankful to the gods that we don't want more land than we already have. Cambyses was so angry that he set out to conquer Ethiopia, but the land was at the edge of the planet. His men quickly ran out of food and then killed the pack animals. He kept going, saying that grass and roots would keep them alive. The soldiers starving by the desert, men selected lots and sacrificed 10 of their friends at a time for meat. Finally, Cambyses gave in. He turned back from Ethiopia in sad defeat, broken and wasted. When he got back to Egypt, he saw that the people were having a feast. They danced to honor Apis, the holy bull of fertility and the underworld. Cambyses thought they were making fun of his failure because he was so suspicious. He called the governors of Memphis and demanded answers. They talked about the Apis celebration. He said they were lying and had them killed. The priests told him the same thing, but Cambyses didn't trust them. Finally, Apis was brought to him. He was a newborn calf that had been born from a cow that had been touched by divine light. Cambyses was so angry that he stabbed the holy animal and said, "This is your god, a living thing that bleeds? This kind of god is good for you Egyptians." Cambyses told the priests of Apis to beat them and made it illegal to worship the god. Anyone who honored Apis was put to death. The holy bull died quickly after Cambyses hurt it, which was a crime that outraged both Persians and Egyptians. He went crazy. He became jealous of his brother Smerdis, the only guy who could pull back the Ethiopians' powerful bow. Cambyses dispatched his faithful courtier Psamtik to assassinate Smerdis after dreaming of him on his throne with his head in the clouds. There was a hidden murder of Smerdis. Cambyses soon compelled one sister to marry him, killed her, and then married another. People murmured about his craziness, but to show he was sane, he killed Psamtik's son with an arrow shot from his throne. Cambyses became ruthless in Egypt, but 2 Magian brothers rose to power in Persia. One of them, also named Smerdis, and looking a lot like the dead prince, was said to be the true heir. The Persians thought that Cambyses' brother was still alive. People who propagated the word said that Smerdis, not Cambyses, was now the king of Persia. Cambyses thought Psamtik was betraying him when he heard, but Psamtik promised that he had done what he was told. He found out about the Magian trick by looking into himself. Cambyses now understood his dream. It had warned him not about his brother, but against fake people who were high up in Persia. He lamented Smerdis' death and was ready to face the Magi after he realized the truth too late. But fate was terrible. Cambyses stabbed his thigh with his own sword, in the same spot where he had already hurt the sacred Apis bull as he got on his horse to go to Susa. The wound got worse, and he was doomed. As he became closer to death, he called together Persian nobles and told them all his misdeeds, including killing his brother and alerting them of the Magian conspiracy, but they thought he was just talking nonsense. Cambyses died 20 days later without having any children to take over. The empire he got from Cyrus was thrown into disarray. People claimed the throne, and they didn't know who to trust. Persia was sad when Cambyses died, but the Magian brothers were in charge, and they tricked the populace into thinking that their fake Smerdis was Cyrus's real son. He governed for 7 months and was adored and respected by the people. But the nobles started to get suspicious. Otanes, whose daughter Phedemia had been married to Cambyses and was now married to the fake Smerdis, sent her a message. While he sleeps, touch his ears. Cyrus had hacked off the impostor's ear years before as retribution. Phedemia told the truth that night. The king on the throne was not Cyrus's son, he was the Magian impostor. Otanes told this secret to a few trustworthy aristocrats, including Darius, the son of Hystaspes, and a cousin of the royal family.
We must act.
They spoke about what to do. Darius pushed for quick action, saying that waiting would only lead to betrayal. The Magi, on the other hand, tried to buy Prexaspes' loyalty. He was the only one who knew that Cambyses had killed his brother in secret. They promised him money and land if he would say that the phony Smerdis was real. Prexaspes, on the other hand, took the moment to confess. He told the Persians about the murder, the Magian deception, and the false person. After he talked, he jumped from a tower and died. Darius and 6 other nobles attacked the palace because they believed in what he said. The Magian brothers were killed, and their lies came to an end. There were no fake people in Persia. Darius was chosen to be king out of the 7. He changed the way the empire was set up by splitting it into 20 satrapies, each of which had to pay tribute. The Indians sent gold dust from the Far East, which was like a river of wealth streaming into Persian coffers. Herodotus wrote about the many different tribes that lived in India. Some lived in marshes and wore clothes made of plants, while others were nomads. The Padeans resided to the east. They ate raw meat and followed horrible practices, including executing sick people and eating their bodies. Among them, denying disease couldn't spare someone from being killed, and old age was rare because not many people survived long enough to reach it. But Herodotus also observed kinder tribes in other parts of India. These people didn't kill anyone, grow farms, or eat wild seeds. Some Indian tribes left sick people alone. They went back if they got well, and they stayed where they fell if they died. People lived and died in silence. To the north, savage Indians near Kaspateros and Paktika searched for gold in deserts that were reported to be full of ants the size of foxes. Herodotus said that these animals dug up sand that was full of gold dust. Scholars now think that Himalayan marmots were his ants. The Indians planned their attacks for the warmest parts of the day, when the animals were hiding underground. They packed bags with sand and ran away with 3 camels, chased by the fast, gold-guarding animals. Sometimes, slower male camels were killed to keep the pursuit going. India gave Darius riches, and Arabia gave him spices. Herodotus said it was the southernmost area and the source of frankincense, myrrh, cassia, cinnamon, and rock rose resin. Only brave and unique practices might win each one. There were clouds of winged snakes around frankincense trees. Arabs burned storax resin to get rid of the snakes that were in the way. Cassia grew in lakes surrounded by animals that looked like bats and screamed at those who tried to get in. They were kept away by leather wrappings and meticulous stealth. People stated that big birds used to harvest cinnamon. They took the sticks to nests on steep cliffs. The Arabs put heavy dead animals below. When they were pulled up, They smashed the nests apart, sending cinnamon tumbling to the ground. The last prize was laudanum, a type of resin from rock rose that was found stuck to the beards of male goats. People liked the smell of it in perfumes and burned it as incense, even if it came from regions that smelt bad. It was the most plentiful gift from Arabia to the world. Darius's first problem came soon after he split his realm into satrapies. Interphrenes, one of the 6 nobles who killed the Magi, broke into the palace. When guards stopped him and said the king was with his wife, he was so angry that he hurt them. Darius was afraid of a bigger plot. He asked the other nobles, but they all said that Interphrenes had acted on his own. He put him, his sons, and his family in jail. Darius let his wife rescue one because she begged him to. She chose her brother instead of her husband or her sons. I can get married again and have more sons, but since my parents are dead, I'll never have another brother. Darius was impressed by her logic and let the brother and oldest son go, but he killed the rest. The uprising of Babylon was Darius's second test a year later. The Babylonians had been secretly planning for years because they were angry about Magian tyranny. To get ready, they killed almost all of their women, leaving just mothers and 1 woman per household. This saved food for the siege. Darius laid siege to Babylon for a year and a half when he marched on it. He tried everything, even things that Cyrus had done before, but the city remained strong, its huge walls making fun of everything he did. Babylonians made fun of the people who were attacking them from the top of their walls. Persians, go home, one person said. You will only conquer Babylon when mules have babies. They laughed, safe behind their huge walls. But in the 20th month, Zopyrus's mule had a baby. For the Persians, this miracle was a sign from fate. Zopyrus, the son of Cambyses, thought it was a sign from God that Babylon's time was over. He hurt himself by cutting off his ears and nose. Darius was horrified, but Zopyrus told him his plan: to make it look like the king had punished him, win Babylon's trust, and take control of their army. He persuaded them of his allegiance, 1 step at a time. He led Babylonian soldiers against Persian units that Darius had set up as sacrifices. They trusted him more and more with each triumph until they gave him full control. Finally, Zopyrus opened the gates because he had control of them. The city fell when Persian warriors rushed in. The prophecy about the mule came true in the strangest way. Darius had the city's walls torn down and 3,000 nobles impaled as a warning. But the common people were safe, and 50,000 women were sent from nearby countries to bring the population back up.